My brothers, so good to see you guys as always. It's a pleasure. Chris, we're happy to have you. My friends, we just finished up an amazing workout at the Compound Lifting Club. Absolutely amazing staff, amazing ownership. They always treat us extremely well. Chris took us through a really beautiful quote-unquote rest day.
Yeah. Daddy's rest day.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a grown man's rest day. We always have Andrew here. Andrew, it's just an absolute pleasure to have you doing this journey with me, and Chris, you as well.
Always.
I don't know a group of men that I'd rather do this with. It's been phenomenal having such upstanding but also forward and progressive individuals as a part of this team. And as always, we like to touch on how important it is to surround yourselves with the people that you want to become. Like if you have an idea as to who you want to be, it's probably in your best interest to be around that type of person. I heard something the other day, and they said, if you are trying to become a millionaire or a billionaire and you have no millionaires or billionaires in your group, I don't understand how you plan on getting there. You really do need people who, at the very least, are trying to achieve that particular goal, and you need people who have succeeded to some degree in it, or you are seeing some level of success in it. And I see both of you as further along in certain areas of life as the man I want to become, and I want to give you that kudos right now.
Appreciate
okay,
that.
I'm gonna give you your flowers every single day. We ain't gonna wait till the very end to do it, but I'll be there too. What an absolute pleasure it has been to be on this journey. One thing that I wanted to talk about at this stage in the journey that I found very important is how we attack the practical nature of being young men and attacking our goals and understanding what it is that we want to accomplish and then being able to execute upon it. Like Chris talked to me today about envisioning and then executing. So what I want to know from both of you is, Chris, the last time that we actually had you out, you talked a little bit about your own personal development and what you do for yourself. But when you attack your businesses, when you attack your goals, what are some of the things that you do that help to separate you, in your personal opinion, from the rest of the pack?
So when you're talking about putting certain individuals around you, I realized as I got older and as I saw really successful business people and how they interacted, I realized that it always comes down to self-education. And I wish I knew that in high school and all the other educational institutions, because they didn't really drill that. You know what I'm saying? It was more so we had to learn a curriculum and it became a chore. And we didn't realize that when you get out into real life, that self-education is literally the correlation between what you become as a human being. And then I realized that compounding interest in what you're doing accumulates over time into being a successful individual. Like having those daily rituals and habits that I do every day that are very not that big of a deal, like waking up a certain time, taking a cold shower, reading 20 pages, meditating for 15 minutes. That might not be a lot today, but when I compound that into 4 or 5 years, those things become massive deals, and I evolved as a person because I started realizing that as long as I put my best foot forward every single day in the right direction, I didn't have to sprint, but as long as I was walking in that direction, that I would get the quote that I heard that really changed my life was, the fastest way to get somewhere is slow. You know what I mean? So like having mindful steps in the right direction is the fastest way to get to my goal. And I realized that I was overwhelmed because I saw a lot of people being successful, and I was like, I got to get there right now. And I tried to skip the steps, but I didn't earn the success. So I had to really humble myself and have an ego death. That's what I had to have. I had an ego death and realize that the people that I saw doing the things that were successful had already put in the work. They already learned the lessons. They got the downloads from the universe from all the lessons that they learned and all the failures that they had. And I realized that I had to go through those steps. And there was no quick fix. There was no, I could read one book and then everything changes. I had to make that compound over time, and that would equivalent to me becoming the individual I actually cared about being. And that's where I am now, is like I'm still slowly learning these little parts, and then that's what happens when I put myself in front of people that are really about that life, is that I'm realizing that they're so hungry for self-development that they want to learn how to do everything. And even if it's not them learning everything, they will hire the people that already do. And it's so smart to me, and I'm watching that happen. And if you're lower class and you see people not really striving to be millionaires or whatever, or like just having really successful businesses, you don't see that, right? Because they don't know any better. Like society's told us that we need the 9-to-5 job, and that's what happiness is, and that's what we need to like strive for. but that's because big industry wants us to be workers. And now we're in an industry of social media that's teaching us how to become millionaires with like limited resources.
Yeah.
So we can become millionaires right now because of YouTube, learning certain like tricks of the trade, or there's business everywhere. There's money everywhere. There's so much money to go around. I mean, some people hoard it, but there is still a lot of money to go around, and we just have to learn how to find it and manifest it into our realm. And then so that's what I realized, that manifestation is the act in the right direction, initiating that manifestation, and that's when that energy is attracted to you.
Yeah, Chris, that brings up such a beautiful point, which is, I'm going to talk about the first part about what you said, and it leads so well into the second. The first thing that you said really struck me because I heard a quote, and I'm going to butcher the time frame, but I'm going to give it a shot. And the quote went something like this: a lot of people underestimate what they can do in a year, and they overestimate, or sorry, rather, a lot of people overestimate what they can do in a year, and a lot of people underestimate what they can do in a decade.
Yep.
And that really struck me when you talked about going slow. People who take their time, people who really soak up exactly what it is that they want to do, and they make that goal so clear and well defined, often do a lot better. I heard Oprah talk about this when she was on a show, and Oprah said the question that the gentleman posed to Oprah rather was, what separates people that you see that are highly successful from other people? And she said they're clear on where they're going. And that is so important. And Chris, I see that in you. And Andrew and I do this all the time. So Andrew, forgive me, but I'm gonna pose some more questions at Chris here. One of the things that I also notice about you within that clarity is your clarity of the people around you. And you said something to me last night at dinner that really struck me. You were talking about a specific situation in which you were in these meetings and you were around these very high performers and you were noticing energies. What do you do when you are in a room with individuals who are maybe not your core 4, core 5 individuals who have that good positive energy? How do you maneuver in a room full of vultures?
I think the first thing you have to realize, if you're in that room, that you deserve to be there. That's the first thing, because if you walk into that room and you don't feel like you belong or you don't deserve it, they will eat you up, because you're prey to them. Like real successful people see weak people and they don't think anything of you, right? So like knowing that you belong, and then knowing that your voice actually carries weight and that your opinion matters. And so that when you speak up, you have to speak up with confidence. I mean, if you say anything with the slightest bit of, I don't know, then they just disregard you. And that's when you're with really successful people. When you say things, say it to mean it and say it to make purpose. So like whenever I am in a room with very successful and powerful people, I make it known that I know what I'm talking about. And if I don't, I won't say anything. I will listen. And that's my beautiful attribute or characteristics I have, is that if I feel like I don't know, I will listen until I do, you know? And then if I don't know the answer, just like how you are, which I respect so much, I will figure that out. I will figure out the answer, because I want to walk into every room and belong in a way that I can maneuver. I mean, and obviously it comes down to energy too. Like if you're a high vibrational person, I like to think that I'm a person that walks in a room and people stop. And then they like, oh, like they notice that you walk into that room. And that's always been a really key for me, like knowing that my vibration vibrates at a certain rate that I can stop attention. And they know that, oh, someone serious just walked in.
Yeah.
Because I can alter the room. And then now they know that this guy means serious business.
Damn. That's crazy. No, I get what you're saying. I like how you said, like, would you put it more in like walking into a room and walking into that room with that confidence, knowing like, okay, like not in a cocky, like arrogant way, but in a way it's like, I mean business, like I know what I have to offer. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so it's like if I were to make the example of like myself personally, if I walk into any gym, I walk in because I've been so successful at things and I've done things and I've earned the right to walk in it with confidence, so that I don't even question that anybody in there is gonna tell me that I'm wrong in anything. And that's not me being cocky, but it's also me saying I'm very confident in what I've accomplished, and I know that I belong in the room with the strongest guys in the world, and I'll chunk them with the best of them. If we're having a conversation about programming and how to make the strongest athlete, I know I belong in that conversation. Sometimes it is hard because you are put into rooms that you might not know, but then that comes down to how is your self-improvement? Because if you actually go in and do your inner work and you actually really want to be the best version of yourself, then you should be confident whenever you walk into any room. And it doesn't even have to be about information. It's about socializing. It's how am I interacting with this person? Am I looking them in the eyes? Am I shaking their hand firmly? Am I standing up straight? Am I being proud in who I am? And that actually goes way farther than people actually think. People slouching down on their phone, looking down. That shit speaks volumes to people that are actually powerful or actually have like merit behind them.
I saw this the other day in you, Chris, and I thought about it. And there was a gentleman who was talking about really successful individuals, and one of the things that he said really caught me, and I thought about you for a good long moment, and it was about presence, and that's really what you're describing. And he said earlier, Andrew, and this really caught me because I was thinking about you too, because both of you guys have this. You guys do have a sense of belonging, and it's not a sense of and I love that Andrew asked this question. It really does not for any of us come down to a cockiness. It's simply and Chris does it the best. He does it probably before interactions. I'm going to take a guess because I walked in this house the other day, Andrew. Let me tell you something. This man was playing vibrational music, and I was like, oh, he's different. Oh, he's different. And what that is to me is what Tony Robbins called, I believe it's called grounding. Like he grounds himself. And so then when he leaves the casa, if you will, his energy is already centered. And what this gentleman said on this post really struck me about people who are really centered. When they walk into rooms, he said the most valuable thing you can do that separates billionaires from millionaires is connection. Like, who are you able to connect with? And how do people feel when they're around you? Because people will return and do business with people that they like and people that they enjoy and people whose energies add to their own. And when Chris is in spaces, I saw him the other day, and he's around these big figures, like, and I won't name a lot of them, but two of my favorite guys, and one of them I just met recently, but Koa is just such a solid individual, and these people, and then G Money is the dog, and I was just like, man, these energies that are around Chris are larger than life to somebody my age at 27, and they're only a few years older than me. All you guys are only like less than 5-10 years older than me, but when I look at you guys, what's interesting is I feel safe in your space, and that's so beautiful that your presence can be so large and yet be so welcoming. And when people look at you from a distance, I talked to Andrew about this, when people look at you from a distance, it looks scary, and then the closer they get, they realize it's love, and they realize it's positivity. One of the things that I think helps to separate individuals who go further, and this is you might not think this is practical, but it is. This is something very practical that you can do. Just be a good fucking person. Just be true to yourself. And when you step into environments, you don't have to fake the funk. What Chris did not say is pretend that you know shit that you don't know. What he did say, however, is that you should come into a room with, at the very least, a willingness to learn. How important is that? How important is it to walk into a room and say what Will Smith said? He says, I may not know how to do it, but I promise you, I'm going to figure out how to get it done in the pursuit of happiness. It just really struck me. It really struck me. Andrew, a question that I wanted to pose to you the other day when we were talking a little bit about your relationships and about your life, when you recentered and you went through all the things that you went through, and we talked about this in the last podcast, so hopefully people were able to hear, what were the things that you did that helped you to restructure a new Andrew? Because I understand one thing. It seems as though what happened to you broke you down to the cores of your foundations to some degree, and I'd imagine that you got a chance to reinvent who Andrew was to Andrew. Am I wrong?
No, absolutely. I think, Chris, I think you talked about this the last time we had you.
Right?
Yeah, was like pretty much, honestly, like think of it like a whiteboard. You have this whole plan, doesn't work out, erasing the crap out of it and starting just from ground zero, and realizing, and it was tough just because it was like feeling like I was, 23, 24. I'm like, I felt like I already had to have my life together. Feeling like, dang, I'm 23, I'm 24. I got to start from ground zero. I have to, figure things out. And it came down to really just starting off with, like, myself. Chris said, he's like, I had to be, I think you said, you mentioned you're like, yeah, I have to be good for myself before I'm good for another person. And so I was like, okay, like, how can I be good for me? What's the things that I have to do? I'm taking those first steps, because it's always hard. Like, the hardest part is starting. We mentioned it right before this. The hardest part is starting. And so it's really analyzing myself and being like, okay, like, what is it that you were doing, Andrew, that you've been doing for, some time, and it's just not working out. It's not working out for you financially, mentally, physically, all that stuff. And so I had to look at that in the most basic terms, and really implement more stuff. Like, I didn't believe in therapy. Like, I thought therapy was just for people that were going crazy.
Crazy people, yeah.
Crazy people.
That was society's terms of it.
Exactly. And so starting off with that, going to therapy, that was like my first step, really, was going to
Which
therapy
is awesome.
and starting.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, and I still, still go to this day, and it's been like almost 2 years. And so it's like, that was my first like starting point. And then from there, obviously I had, my therapist, he helped me out with different maneuvers. And then honestly, the next hardest part was looking at the people that I was surrounding myself with. And we had the conversation. And that's why even like when you were mentioning G Money and Co and stuff like that, like they're a lot older than you. That's how I see you guys. I'm like, I'm 25. Reggie, you're 27. You're 33. And so I'm like, you guys are older than me, not that far off, but I'm like, okay, like I look up to these guys now, and I'm like, man, like they've gone through all these things. These are the people that I want to surround myself with, because these are the people that are doing successful shit. These are the people that, that have been in the, in the industry for a while, that are doing, the whole fitness thing, all that other stuff. Same thing with you, all the photography work, all the, all the camera work that you're doing. Like, I'm still at the very starting base, and that's why I ask you all the time, like, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? Because I'm like, I want to learn, but just surrounding myself with those people, and I had to cut off a lot of people. I'm not even like cut them off, like I'm not talking to you, but just be like, I'm done putting my energy into these people that it's not doing me good.
Let's not skip over something that you just said. One of the other things that you can do when you're building your presence and you're building your knowledge is be of service to those who you look up to and who you are trying to follow in the footsteps of to some degree, and whose blueprints you are borrowing. So I really want to touch on that, and that is very, very important. When you're around these individuals who are whatever you believe is the high value, which I don't personally agree with the societal standard of what high valued is. High value to me is just a good motherfucker. But let's just say you're even talking about high net worth specifically. Be of service, because they probably need things too. And something I heard someone say that was very interesting: when you come around those high value people, you need to be able to figure out and predict what they need, and then just provide that thing for them. Because if you do that for individuals who are moving in a direction, they're gonna be like, whoa, like, oh, didn't even realize that he was watching that closely and that intently, and he's just gonna do it. He's not gonna ask me if he could do it. He's just starting it off and getting in there. That's a really, really important thing. Chris, something that I want to do here that I think will be a little bit special. Can I dig in your book of gems and drop something? Will you be upset? Okay, cool. One of the things that I really applaud you on, and this is a very practical and a different approach, more in the social media space, that I think will be of value, is your understanding of virality. Okay. And you talk to me a lot about how you understand content moderation and the recycling of content when you deem it necessary and when it's helpful. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So the way that the algorithm works now is that whenever you post something, it opens up to a percentage of your population that's watching you. So people get super insecure about reposting things because they think that everybody that follows them saw exactly what they posted. So knowing that maybe 10 to 15% of the people that follow you saw what you posted, and depending on how they engage with that actual content will depend on if it releases it to the rest of your audience. So if you don't hit on the first one but you understand that it's great content, you have to repost and you have to recycle, because if you want to grow your page, if you want to grow your social media following, you have to have a database. This is the Gary Vee method. This is like the method that I use to grow my page to almost 100,000 followers. It's like you have a database of things that you know that bring value to people or are entertainment for people. And I have about a database of 20 to 30 videos that I know at any point in time will hit. And that's what I recycle, because knowing that those actually make a difference, and it's changed my perspective, because I always looked at it like I'm trying to get 1 million views, and I've talked about this on other podcasts. I'm not trying to get 1 million views anymore. I'm trying to touch 1 million lives. So if I make content that I know will help somebody, then I'm gonna keep reposting it, because I might open it up to a population that never saw it before. And then if I could save someone's life in that process that's never seen it, and I'm still constantly seeing it today, like I'll repost something that I've reposted 15 times, and then people are messaging me still about that video that just got posted, saying how it helped them through a tough time. So if I'm looking at me trying to be service to others that need a voice of light that they're really in a dark place and they're just trying to find their way, I look and I take the responsibility that I could be that person for those people. And just from something simple like that. And then, so for me, I take a lot of responsibility for it because it doesn't take much on my part to make the content, but the value it holds could make the biggest bit of difference for anybody.
Yes.
And I might be able to do it pretty simply now, but it took me, like, I think the quote I heard that really impacted me was, people pay me for something I can do in 3 minutes, but it took me 10 years to learn. So that's where my value comes. I have all this value, and I know how to position content. I know how to make it valuable, and I just generally want to be an amazing person every day I wake up. So then when my content speaks the way I feel, then it makes a difference.
Yeah.
And so that's why I really truly wake up every morning trying to do.
It also seems like you found a way to really make it work for you. Like, a lot of people have to work for everything. They work for money. They exchange time and effort for whatever they feel is of value. And what's interesting about you, Chris, is you found a way to change that algorithm within yourself and within your household as to where things work for you. And that's very interesting. I would say that that is actually another thing that we should talk about. And we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I'd really love to speak about how you transform your life into having passive flows of information, of money, of all of those different things. So I think that that's what we'll dig into. So as we left off before we went to break, one of the things that I feel like is of value to individuals who are coming up into a space where they are beginning to establish their goals, they're starting to gain some structure, is finding out how to make things in their lives work for them. This could be family structure. This could be a lot of different things. One of the hardest things to do before we dig into each of the passive flows in your life, one of the hardest things to do is delegate, that I've noticed. And I love, Chris, the way that specifically you and I work together, because the way that we delegate tasks to one another is because we know the positive intent of what the other person's trying to do. We're like, hey, you can handle this, you can handle this. And I've noticed that as of recent, we've gotten to a point where I'm like, hey, I'll just pick up this task. And you're like, all right, cool, I'm going to do this. Can you talk to me a little bit about what you look for in individuals and how you delegate in your life?
So you're a problem solver. And so I look at that, and because I'm a problem solver too, and I look in two things, problem solving and confidence. And because I know a lot of times that you might not know exactly what to do, but you attack it in a way that you do, and that you're going to find out if it doesn't. So then I see those. Sometimes I trust you more than I trust myself in terms of things that I know that you probably are a little bit more well-versed in. So when I look at individuals, it's the way that they maneuver. So it's literally the little tasks that they do, because whatever you do for this, you'll do for everything, like just the smallest task, right? So if you're fucking lazy and you leave trash all over the place, then it probably speaks volumes of who you are as a person. So I've heard that a bunch of millionaires say that, and I just took that to heart, because I knew that the compound interest of what you do is exactly who you are. So then I want to make sure that people have the right rituals and habits when I'm looking at them, so that I can trust whatever that they're going to do will actually be equivalent or better than what I would do. So there's so much trust that goes into our relationship, because I've watched you problem solve, I've watched you maneuver, and even those times that you probably didn't think that anyone was listening, when you were speaking to yourself, right? We're in Keanu's room and you're saying, I don't know what it is, but I'm about to find out right now. And then so those things mean the biggest to me, because I know that that's the process, your process. And I know that's the process in which you are being successful, because I know that someone else would be like, I can't figure it out. Like, I would have to call somebody. But to have someone that's like, I don't know, I'm going to figure it out though, and we're going to keep failing until we figure it out, that people don't do that anymore. You know what I mean?
This is a lot of reason that Andrew is on my team now and on our team now, is I would much rather have, and Andrew, I know you the other day, you were like, how can I be of service? How can I help the group, when we were talking about, setting up the new place and getting everything all situated. And one of the interesting things, Andrew, and I talked to Chris about this, Chris DeBall this morning. Andrew, I would much rather, like Chris G just said, I would much much rather have individuals who don't know the information but are willing to try and figure it out on my team than somebody who's just specifically skilled in one area. Okay, because another thing is, if you really don't have to figure everything out. One thing that I've learned is, let's say that there's a range of your knowledge and your understanding of a particular skill set, and let's say that that range is from 50 to 100, just to keep it nice and simple. Okay, 50 is a baseline where you could say, I'm someone who could pick up a camera and work it. I'm someone who could pick up a screen press and make a shirt. I'm someone who could pick up a YouTube video and start to finish shoot it. Okay, so you're at 50, right, in a lot of different areas. And what's interesting is, you don't need to be at 100, and I don't think in most areas in life you need to be at 100. What you need to do is get to a skill level that is not professional, but is of good understanding. Because once you reach that, Andrew, this is really important. I want you to check me out on this. Once you reach that point, then what you do is you find the individuals who are extreme professionals at
dude.
it.
That's what I was about to say. I listened to an interview with, I think it was Jeff Bezos, and he said the way you become a billionaire is that you create a clear vision of where you want to go with your plan, and then you hire the best in the world on your team, and then the third lesson is you get the fuck out the way and let them do their jobs and don't fuck it up. So it's like, you could be super successful, but you know how to spot individuals that are better at something than you are and just get out of their way. Right? Like, you're better at all this than me. I just get out of your way and I let you take the lead on everything like that, because I know that if I did it, it wouldn't work out properly, or it'd take me a lot longer to figure it out, right? So I know how to delegate because of maturity and comfortability in knowing that my ego is not so big that I have to be good at everything. I know my truth. I know what I'm good at, but I'm always striving to be better at everything. But I know when others are more skilled than me in other things, and I let them take the lead, because it's not about me, it's about we. We have a common goal. We're trying to strive for something. I can't do everything, and if I did, then I would burn myself out like I did with my other businesses, with my gym, working 120-hour weeks, and I learned that lesson when I did that. And so then now I know that if I'm going to make it to the end of the race in the best way, in the most successful way, it's going to be as a group and with people that can pick up the slack when I'm falling back, and then for the people that when they're falling back, I can pick up the slack in certain ways too. It's a team effort.
You were heavily involved in the scale and the explosion of that facility and of the brands that were around it. And I know that you are a master in the virality space, but what other things did you do that helped to facilitate the growth at such an exponential rate?
It honestly was the back end stuff. So it's I'm such a positive individual, and when people start wavering in terms of confidence or whatever, I'm there to pick them up, and I'm there to pull them together like glue. So my teams that I've ever been a part of, because with Strength Cartel, I was the head coach for the whole team. I coached everybody. I was the glue to make sure everybody was successful. And a lot of that time, you're dealing with egos, you're dealing with people with insecurities, you're dealing with certain weaknesses mentally. So as the leader of that little group, I had to facilitate in a way that I had to be oversight of everything and make sure that I could put my hands on certain situations and be like, okay, pull this guy back. Okay, start feeding some confidence into him. Like, so like, say like Bruce, he was just the most insecure person when I first got him. And then it took me so much energy to pump confidence into him so that he could actually reach the levels that he is right now. And that's all back end work. That's the stuff that I value, because when we were really blowing up, everybody was trying to step into the limelight while I was stepping back, and I was trying to facilitate the whole group. And people would always say, like, Topo needs to be more in front, like he needs to be speaking more, he needs to be doing all these things, but that I knew that wasn't my role. A real leader doesn't need to be in the limelight. He can be in the back leading the group, because he needs to see who's falling back. He needs to see who's like not doing their best, and then he can fucking push them forward and make sure that he's staying up with the pace. Like, that's who I am as a person. Like, I don't need the shine, I don't need the credibility, all this stuff like that. I care more about the group's success. Any group that I've ever been in, I've been a captain on every football team I've ever been on. And that, to me, was just my undying characteristic that I stuck out way better than everybody else, was that my unselfishness to want to have the group succeed, and it didn't matter how successful I was as an individual.
You seem to have had an adept ability to lead individuals towards a successful goal. One of the things that I think about often and I get scared of, the more people that come on my team and the more people that look at me as a leader, and I wanted to talk to you about this the other day and we just didn't get around to it, and now is the perfect time. How do you pull individuals from something, a task, if you will, or even on the team that aren't necessarily seeing through the vision? How do you talk to somebody and communicate that? I luckily don't have that problem as of yet, but I'm sure as we get more staff and we get more people running, at some point someone's not going to fit into the vision. What do you? How does a leader handle that?
So I think that honestly comes down to how you look at your self-improvement, because the more you learn, the more you can learn about others. So like if I learn as many strategies or personality traits as possible, if I interact with enough people, then I can notice things in people, and then I can audit the group and see if someone's being detrimental or if they're lacking in certain characteristics that I can feed into, or if that's something that gets to a point that we just have to part ways. I think that once I started taking value in who I put around me and I started auditing what they were talking about, like if I would sit there and with a group and then they're all talking, oh, I was with these girls, banging all these girls, and no, woo-woo, and then I'm seeing that there's no value there. So then I would pull back from that and be like, okay, we're going to spend less time with this person because he's not in a position right now that he wants growth. He wants distractions. And so that now I see bigger picture things with people because they not know what they do. They don't understand. They just are going with society's terms and what they think that they should be talking about. But when you have really high performing people, they talk about performing. They talk about self-growth. They talk about how are we going to be successful together. And if those conversations aren't happening, then you have to audit the group. And then you have to, if you love that person, you want that person in the group to say they have great characteristics, you have to have a conversation with them, which I've had to have conversations with that with a lot of my boys, because sometimes that's what happens. That negativity comes out. They're talking about, oh, we got drunk last night, we got so fucked up, but whatever, we took all these drugs. And then I'll have to pull them aside and be like, look, man, that's not what we're doing, because you're taking on the whole group. That whole vibration is dropping because of the things you're saying, regardless if you think people are listening to you or you think you're just being funny. We comprehend those things subconsciously, and then that ingrains in us. And if I can control what I listen to on a day-to-day basis, and I make sure that that quality is at a high rate, then I'm going to be the best person I could be, because I don't have to sift through the bullshit of somebody else's crap that they're dealing with. And that's not me being like a bad friend or anything like that. It's just me knowing my worth and knowing that God put me on this earth to do something great. And that if I'm sitting here listening to this dude talk about he banged a bunch of chicks, then he's wasting my time, he's wasting my energy, and he's taking up space in my brain and even if I hear it and then I have to release it, that's energy that I don't want to put forth. I would rather intercept something that's valuable to me and then make it long-term memory, and then so that we can move on and become better individuals. That's why I see things now. Like back in the day, I didn't see that, because when we were being successful, girls were coming at us from all angles, money, whatever, they were throwing money at us. We were going to all these shows, and that's inevitable to happen. Like people just care about those things. But when I left the group, that's when I realized that I had to audit everything around me, and then I had to learn from the things that I didn't learn from back then, because I knew it was a detriment to me, because I saw myself change. And I've been a solid motherfucker since day one. Like I've only cared about people. I always want to help. I want to give back to the community. I want to really be a great person. And when I felt myself shifting and becoming a different individual, that's when I was like, something has to change. And because I'm solid, bro, like my mentality and my mental toughness is very solid. So when I saw myself shifting, I was like, this is subconscious. This is a subconscious thing. Even with me thinking, like knowing that I'm this dude, I'm trying to be a great person, these little things seeped into my head and they started flowing me to a different direction I didn't even know I was going. You know what I mean? All of a sudden I wake up one day and I'm starting to value girls way more than I ever have in my life, or cars, or money, or attention. And I'm like, where did this happen? And then people around me started seeing it, like my family, like, oh, like he's getting big head, whatever. Like, and then I didn't even notice it first. So like that's the weird thing, is that when you put yourself around these people, subconsciously you're gonna start acting like them. Like you show me 6 loser, I'll show you the 7th one. I'll point right at you, bro, because that's what you're becoming, right? And then that's why I started learning. So then when I started seeing my boys be successful, like Koa, G Money, all those guys, and then I started listening and auditing what they were saying, the value what they bring when they open their mouths is skies and like way above everyone else that I was talking to. And so then now I got hungry for that. I was like, man, this is where it's at, because I feel myself elevating because of what they're talking about. So I got to get other motherfuckers that talk about shit like this. And then if we bring them all together, we're going to be unstoppable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, from a baseline, what you're talking about is input and output. You really had to monitor the input that was coming into your life. If we look at it from a binary perspective, how can your output be at its best when what you are receiving is not? When I water a plant, I water it with the best nutrients in order for it to grow to be at its fullest potential. Andrew just faced a situation that was so interesting, and I really did a self-audit on the way that I lead my team, as I have just become a leader in my group at my particular career path as of this moment. And Andrew was at this job, and Andrew, please forgive me if I'm spilling the beans on some stuff, but I know you're not working there anymore. And Andrew was in the situation where the team members around him, some of them had become toxic. And it was interesting because he had brought this up to the leadership, and the leadership did not do anything of serious nature about it. Now, there may be reasons for that, but what I will say is that you cannot allow that infectious nature to find its way into your team. It will seep in, as Chris said, and it will really cause harm. Andrew, from your perspective as a team member who was not necessarily the leader of that group, how did that affect your work ethic?
That's why I'm not there, if I'm being honest.
Yeah,
you know,
for real.
Fair enough.
Hey,
and it's like,
proof in the pudding.
for this, plain and simple. And kind of how you guys said, like, you are who you hang out with. You are who you surround yourself with, whether it is like work environment, friends. I've now grown a more chokehold on that specific statement, just because it's so true. It's so much true, you know, especially with work, how you were saying, you know, my previous job, it was like I was there from pretty much 9 to 6, 9 to 5, whatever you want to call it, 5 days a week. And so I was seeing these people 5 days a week, 40 hours. And so 40 hours, that's a big chunk of your week. Not a big office. And so it put a big mental toll on me, just emotionally and mentally. And the crazy part is, like you said, I brought this up to management, and it was just like, can't really do much about it, because, you know, they're not doing anything directly at you. It's just
To like
energy.
fire them or anything like that.
Yeah,
They
just the energy was just, the attitude was just trash. Like, it was terrible. I'm gonna say how it is. It was completely bad. And kind of like you said, like when you see someone's energy just shift down, it's super negative, whether it's directly towards you, whether it's directly at someone else, whether it's just in general. It's like, you don't want to surround yourself with those type of people. And so I saw that, and the cool thing is that I'm enjoying about the new job is literally within like the first 2 days, they're like, yeah, you know, if you have an issue with someone, they're just being very negative, just let us know and we'll talk to that person, because we know how one individual, a little crack in the bottle can lead to such a bigger crack and bring a team down.
I actually saw a video. I think someone was talking about high performers in terms of like how they relate to the team or how positive they are. And then the graph, I'm a visual learner, so there was a graph like this. And then if you're a high performer, but you don't get along, or you're just like a toxic person, so you'd be like right near this part of the graph. And then so people that were less performers or lesser than that high performer, but had a better team camaraderie, actually were further along than they were and actually brought the team's success up. So then they said that even if they're high performers, but they have toxic behaviors or they're like bringing down the team in some way, it's better to get rid of them, even though they produce at a high rate, because they're bringing the whole team and the whole production down, which I thought was like really good visual, because the reality of it is that we all have a choice to heal from what we've been through, and 99% of the population chooses not to. And so we have to be able to identify the people that literally decided that they're gonna die pissed off, because that's your choice, right? You can fucking either heal and become the best version of yourself, or you can die pissed off. And some people truly just want to die with animosity and anger towards whatever happened to them. And so when I spot that out, and it's little keywords that they say, right? Like when it rains, it pours, or like when, like those little like key says, those things that, you know, everybody kind of used to say when we were younger. What's a term that would kind of identify that? I'm having a blank now.
One thing I look for is when they're always blaming someone else.
Yeah. So that, especially that, man, I had a phrase in my head. It's I blanked now.
Yeah.
When
it rains, it pours is a good one. I mean,
It
that's
is.
a solid-
Man, damn, I had a good one too. Motherfucker.
yeah. Or like, why is it always me? Or
Yeah,
these-
that's very similar to what I was gonna say. Like when they kind of always say, like, why can't I think of it? Oh, you could talk. I literally forgot it.
It's all
It's
good.
gonna come to me in like 5 minutes. I'm like,
throw it
just
out. Just throw it out.
blurt it out.
Just push me in the water down here. I know what it is. But you're really hitting on a very key point. And I believe it's the founder of LinkedIn who talked about this, and he said the exact same thing. He said, I cannot jeopardize the entire structure and the environment of my team for this one individual just because they're killing it in this area. And a lot of times they don't even have to be super negative. Guys, they just have to not be headed in the same direction that you're trying to take the team. That's equally as detrimental. Equally as detrimental. You have to watch out for that. And the way that he talked about bringing them into office, and he would just say, hey, listen, you're amazing, but we're not headed in the same direction on this vision. We've had a couple talks about it. We did some check-ins. It just doesn't seem like it's working. And then he said something that was really interesting. I'm really hoping this is the right one so that I can tag the fireside chat below. Is he talked a lot about how he helps them to transition out. He would literally work with these people to help them transition out. Now, let me tell you something. We talk a lot about capacity nowadays, okay? So he has the capacity to be able to do that and the resource to be able to do that. Sometimes you don't have that. You need to just let people go. Don't ghost them. Don't ghost them. But you do need to talk to people and say, hey, look, I don't believe that we're headed in the same direction. My friend Braulio is amazing at doing this. He'll just let you know, hey, look, I can't facilitate this relationship anymore. And I think that is really powerful, and it's very hard for people to do because a lot of times you're worried about what the implication is or what will follow. What is the reaction that's going to happen? Another thing that you talked about, Andrew, is time management, and I felt like this was really important. I looked at myself the other day, and I can't remember who I said this to. I want to say it was to Cristobal, and I said, dude, I'm at work for 50 hours. Because you take the 8-hour day, right, which is a 40-hour work week, and then you take an hour lunch, that's every single day, and then you take the 30-minute commute each way. So that's roughly close to 60 hours after it's said and done, especially if I'm salary. So if I have to stick around, I have to stick around. And I promise you, more times than not, I'm staying longer, and I almost never leave earlier. So let's talk about that, because
can't catch a break.
Can't
catch a break, dude. I was sitting like,
yeah.
Can't catch a break. You got to stay away from people that say shit like that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I had to. I was like, it was like, oh, fuck, dude, there
Thanks
it
for
is.
not pushing me in the water. I appreciate it.
That was good.
One thing that you can catch a break in is your time management. When you look at how long and you audit, Chris says this all the time, like, are you auditing the things that are within your life? And I love that about you. You audit everything. You audit the input of the sound that's in your motherfucking home. I just think that that's absolutely amazing.
That was funny how
That's
you walked in like,
amazing.
what are you listening to?
I walked in, bro, it sounded like a Mongolian word. It was like, oh.
I was like, you don't listen to frequencies?
I was like, this dude's on a different, I know, he looked at me like, bro, like, you remember when Homeboy was like, you don't fuck with Pangea? From that,
Pangea.
You don't fuck with Pangea? Like, that was the vibe that he gave me. But what's interesting is, even in Chris's time frame where he's at his home, he's auditing and managing his space and his time. Think about the relevancy of the fact that when normal people are probably listening to some ghetto ass music, using that 30 minutes, he's listening to frequency music. Like, he's utilizing his time better than most people, and we can see the desired outcome taking effect. I can't stress this enough. One of the most practical things you can do is recognize where your time is going currently, and then do whatever the fuck you need to do to make sure that it goes in the right direction. Because if your time is going somewhere that you don't appreciate, change it. Change it. If you are doing something that you cannot stand behind, if you are doing something that is not positive and influential to your health and well-being and your family's well-being, I promise you, you will get much further. Andrew taught me this lesson the other day, or he re-solidified it rather, which was, he was like, fuck it, I'm going to have to take a pay cut. This man changed the amount of money he was making. Most people in this country die over a dollar bill. Let me say it again. Most people in this fucking country die over a dollar bill.
Damn
and
right.
Andrew was like, no, my health is more important than that. And I promise you, the compounding interest, as Chris talked about it earlier, the compounding interest and the equity you will gain from you making that change today as opposed to in 10 years is unfathomable. Make the changes in your life today, because I promise you, tomorrow you will not do it. Make them today. The best time to plant a tree was yesterday. Yesterday is gone. You have today. Plant that seed right now, and I promise you, soon you will have a flourishing, beautiful life, because you have to make decisions that, unfortunately, most of the time are not as fun to deal with in the short term. But long-term decisions, long-term thinking, long-term values pay off in the long term. And I understand it's very hard to see those things. It's hard because it's not immediately present. Your boy Hermosi talked to me. He talked to me through a message, and he was talking about something that I just found so fucking important. And he was talking about how you have to make these decisions today. And what's the other guy's name that you sent me?
Boudros.
This gentleman was talking with Hermosi, and Hermosi backed it up. And these guys were talking about how people are so caught up in short-term successes. And they just dwell in this space where if it's not short-term gratifying to them, they are not going to do it. And how stagnant those individuals are. I just think that's one of the most terrifying things in the world when I watch people make decisions that only affect them within the next 2 to 3 business days. That shit bothers me.
Instant gratification.
Instant gratification.
Yeah. I think that I learned a lot from watching them, and I think that's a testimony to the time we live right now. We have so much information, but we forget that a lot of it is valuable information, that we can literally listen to billionaires on YouTube right now talking about mindset, talking about strategy, talking about the things that they did to get to the levels that they're flourishing in right now. And I started realizing that, like, this is free game. And I can literally listen to this guy talk, and when other people are paying him $100,000 for an hour of his time, but he's making a YouTube video, and I could peep game for 20 minutes just to hear that, then that, like I said, that's me auditing what I'm putting in my head. And I honestly will literally put those videos on my TV, and even if I'm like on my phone, that background noise seeps in a little bit still. Like, this still will absorb slightly, even if it's not super comprehensible. It will literally go into your brain and subconsciously sit in there, and then it randomly comes out when you're like talking about it, which is crazy. So I look at those things now that I value every minute. Every minute, every piece of information is valuable information, and if it's not valuable, I basically get anxiety about it now. I'm like, I can't listen to that. Like, don't get that away from me. Like, that type of stuff. I'm so protective of my energy now that I refuse to let anybody dim my light. I just refuse. I will not allow that anymore. I've let too many people do that, and it's time that people get to a point in their lives that they take back that power, and they say, I will not let you bring me down. I don't care if you're my dad, you're my mom, you're my sister, whatever. I'm lucky enough to have an amazing sister who works for Sony, and she actually works in employee development. So she actually makes the workspaces better for Sony so that they have better production. So like she calls me and she gives me some of the greatest advice that I could ever ask for. I'm blessed in that. But we all have family members or people that we love that will bring you down purely because of their insecurities or the traumas they've been through and they didn't heal from. And I have no patience for that anymore because I let too many people bring me down for too long and make me feel lesser than I actually was. And then it's weird when I'm sitting by myself and I'm like, I am that dude. I'm killing. I'm going to do it. And then I get around somebody and then I walk away from them like, can I do it? I don't like that. To me, changed my point of view on everything, because if I can't control that aspect, then I can't even control where I'm going. I'm literally letting people dictate what I'm doing in my life, and I refuse to do that now. So it's so important who you're putting around you, and it's the most important thing, because at the end of the day, if you're not strong enough to do something, if you put strong people around you, they will make you believe that you can. And they will bring up the average of your group and to think that what you guys can accomplish. So even if you fail, you'll fail succeeding. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you
forward.
Exactly, right? If you're gonna fall forward. Like, if you hang out with all millionaires and you're one of the guys that makes the less amount of money and you're insecure about it, you make $500,000. Guess what, bro? You're still killing it, right? But if you're hanging out with a bunch of weenies that like just smoke weed all day and don't do shit, and then you're the lower end of that spectrum, or even if the higher end of that spectrum, and you're making $10,000 a year or whatever, like, that, you can't be a big fish in a small pond. It's just this world is way too big, and there's too many opportunities to go out and make an impact and be in service of this world and raising the vibration of everything that's around us, and we could actually make a real impact on this world, especially now with videos and YouTube and all these things. We have an opportunity and a responsibility now to do those things because now we have the resources. In the 70s, they didn't, right? You could fucking scream as loud as you can and everyone on the street would hear you, but that's about it, right? We didn't have the phones, we didn't have recording, they didn't have none of that shit. So if you had to make an impact, you were one sheep out of the world that was trying to make a difference. Now we have a lot of individuals that have resources to do that. Now we just have to self-develop to a point that we actually have value to others. That's our obligation now.